Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Legal Weekly Wine, where we talk about the week's hottest legal topics. Up today, we have third part of a three-part series where we are discussing what we believe are Trump's defiance of court orders. The first of this series is about the refusal to pay $2 billion to USAID despite a court's order to pay it. The second one that we have just done is what we believe is the court's the defiance of a district court's order that Trump cannot deport or has to wait on deporting Venezuelans who are allegedly part of a specific gang. And this third part is regarding the deportation of a university professor at Brown University. So we're going to talk about the facts, break those down, find out why we think it is a clear violation of a court order. But we do encourage you to go back to the other prior two that we think are also violations of court orders. So let's break this down. I'm Virginia Tarani. I am the attorney and owner of Tarani Law, LLC. Because you never need a lawyer till you do. I'm also the CEO of The Law Unscripted, which hosts this program, The Legal Weekly Wine. And I am joined by my co-host and fellow member of The Law Unscripted, Dr. John Weil, who is the Dean of the Honors College at Middle Tennessee State University. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, always glad to have you back. Yes, with your mug. Tell us what you have.
Powerade.
Okay. Powerade. And he is drinking it from one of our famous merchandise pieces, our mug. It's in purple for our colors. We do have a black one, too, if you want to order that. But it says, allegedly, this is coffee. Great mug. Thank you for using that. If you want one of those for yourself, go to www.thelawunscripted.com. Go to the merchandise section, check it out, and check out our other merchandise. We've got some great t-shirts on there with some funny legal sayings and quotes. So check that out. Now, Dr. Weil, you're our Constitution expert. I'm an expert in the amending process and constitutional law. I am an attorney. I've been practicing for 19 and a half years in multiple different types of law, including criminal prosecution and criminal defense. Currently, I'm mostly handling civil cases, but we've got a great legal question here of if a judge has an order, does the president, as one of the three branches, the executive branch of the government, have a duty to follow a court order? Or, as in this case, through the executive branch and the other two cases, can he actually disregard it and what I would call disobey the order? So that's our ultimate question. Now, Dr. Weil, we've got, in talking about the Venezuelans, we did that with regard to on basically the middle of March, around March 9th through the 11th, on a weekend. The Trump administration deported approximately 300 Venezuelans accused of being gang members, specific gang members, under what is called the Alien Enemies Act and it was in the 18th century. So the Alien Enemies Act. And this same act, as I understand it, is being used for our current topic, is the deportation of a Brown University professor. Is that your understanding too?
I believe that's right. I believe actually this case is a little trickier.
Yeah.
But maybe the way you frame the question, let me reframe it.
Great.
Next year we're celebrating, and I love to talk to people about the semi-quincentennial.
Yes, that's our favorite.
250 years after the Declaration of Independence, where before it was written, Thomas Paine said, in America, the law is king. And we said, yes, we repudiated a long-standing principle of English law, which is that legally the king can do no wrong. Mm. You might be able to impeach and remove, even execute his subordinates, right, but you're going to blame it on him. You're not going to blame it on the king. No one is above the law. And so the question really, as long as we're maintaining that system of government, the answer is fairly it answers itself. Does the president have to obey the law? Well, he either does or he is above the law.
Oh,
now, I will say I have great concerns, and I believe I share these.
Yes, with
that
me.
In Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court, in my judgment, went too far in immunizing the president for his actions. Now, to be
during
clear,
the presidency,
I believe that political actions that a president takes, I don't believe you should be able to be sued for them. But if the president is violating particularly criminal laws, I believe that he should be just as subject to the legal process as you or I or as anyone else would be.
Right.
And
I want to clarify the decision in Trump versus U.S. and
well,
make
I've
sure,
overstated it just a bit.
just a little.
Much.
And I think the
if
distinction...
it's anything dealing with an official action, or could be an official action, but it turns out it includes, if you're talking to another official about doing something illegal, apparently you can't bring in that testimony if you talk to the right people in government.
Right, but here's the catch, I think.
Okay.
Is I think they still left him open to impeachment. President, not just Trump. I think they left it open to impeachment by Congress.
In other words, they said there is a political remedy here. The problem with that, of course, is that we've had 3 recent impeachments.
Right.
One of Clinton, 2 of Trump. Frankly,
none
any
of them
one
won.
of which,
none of them succeeded.
Right. None. Right. They were impeached, but they were not convicted. They were not removed from office. And it appears as though, in my judgment, members of Congress have simply given up on their constitutional duty. The question they ask is not whether the president is or is not guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. The question they ask is he in my party or is he the other side?
Right.
Now, there have been some exceptions, but all 3 of the last impeachments have been highly partisan affairs. And what's interesting about Nixon, who was not actually officially impeached, he resigned before then,
right,
was that does seem to be a time where there was a bipartisan consensus that what he had done in defying the laws was so egregious that he needed to go. In my judgment, now, again, this doesn't mean, the president needs to, but this sounds condescending, but I'll say it anyway. He needs to learn what you would tell any child, which is, if you ask for something and I say not now, that doesn't necessarily mean never.
Right. And
if he says, well, I think this person is a real detriment to the country, now assuming, let's, for hypothetical, lawyers love that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Assuming the person is not, getting ready to detonate a dirty bomb in New York City or something like that and needs to be immediately deported.
Right.
Absent some kind of exigent circumstance like that, all the court is asking for, or the plaintiff in this case, is, I don't think I'm being fairly deported. And I personally think that there's evidence that maybe they did deserve to be deported.
Sure.
They come back from Lebanon. They've been to a funeral of a major Hezbollah leader. That's as good an indication of any that probably their interests are not aligned with ours. And I think the court would have said that, but, don't jump the gun.
Yes, and that's the distinction here. And I think I have it in talking about this. It does seem, I'm going to retract one of my earlier statements that this is particularly with regard to the Alien Enemies Act. That is specific to the Venezuelan gang members, but it's a similar issue. So it is a deportation. I'm honestly not sure which particular rule they used for immigration and how they did it. But what we do know is that it was put into district court that she was detained. This is a Brown University professor from Lebanon. who had been working approximately 6 years already at the university in the U.S. under proper documentation, legally doing so, that she'd been there for, I think she's a kidney transplant expert and a professor.
She's a doctor, right?
Right. I mean, highly skilled. And this is one of the reasons she was here, was for her specialty. And she went to visit members of her family in Lebanon. She was away for approximately a month. Again, proper papers. She comes back and she's detained. Now, I'm agreeing with what you're saying. If the evidence ends up being true, that she was photographed with Hezbollah leaders, et cetera, then that probably is a risk. But we go back to what we said in the second piece of this series, is it requires due process, right? We need some kind of indication, some kind of hearing that this has happened, and then deport her. And in this particular case, the judge's order, I like where you were headed on it. It was not, you can't. It was wait. The specific language of the order that Judge Sorokin says is, and he issued it, this is Friday night, and I'm going to bring up my calendar again. This is Friday night, March 14th. She was detained Thursday. And on Friday, the judge says that the government has to, if they deport her, they have to give 48 hours notice of their intention to deport her. So this is exactly where you are, Dr. Weil. It's saying, okay, I'm not saying you can't, but what I'm saying is based on this filing, based on this lawsuit, we need to either have a hearing, we need to review arguments, we need to look at the evidence presented, and you need 48 hours. But instead...
May we talk about one of your favorite TV shows?
Oh, please.
And C.K. Chesterton, you know where I'm headed?
Maybe. Father Brown. Is this Father
Brown? Okay.
I did know. So I love this series.
Almost every one of the Father Brown episodes
start
with a somewhat bungling cop jumping to conclusions and incarcerating the
wrong person.
The wrong person, and Father Brown has to do further investigation and make sure they have the facts straight.
And this is also, by the way, one of my other shows is Murder, She Wrote. This is, Jessica Fletcher is the same thing. They always arrest the wrong person. She's got to do some more investigation. Same with Father Brown as the, heroes.
And by the way, if either of them ever offer to come to your town, the answer is no. We don't need you here.
People die.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I mean, there's actually a solid legal principle. I mean, if you watch enough of these, you realize that going to them, could it be her twin sister?
Right. I have a twin.
Could it be
it is
now?
her.
We'd have to ask, could this image they have be AI generated? Could someone have, photobombed I doubt that this happened.
Whether it's photoshopped, whether it's AI, what happened.
But in my understanding is, in this case, she's in detention, right? I mean, she's stuck in the airport under ICE custody.
Yes.
She's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
She's not going to detonate a bomb or anything like that. She's just been on a plane.
Right. But after the court order on Friday, they deport her the same night. So it's like, oh, okay, nice to have the order and all. We're not going to wait that. We're not going to wait the 48 hours. We're not even going to give the notice of the 48 hours. So it's a two-part violation of this court order of, okay, she's off. And just like the Venezuelans, it's like, oh, she's over international waters. We can't bring her back now.
You're beating a dead horse. She's already deported.
She's gone. Yeah. We no longer have jurisdiction.
Again, you kill the horse and then you accuse someone of beating the horse.
Right. So we've got this, and this is where we get into, and we promised in the second episode that we would get a little bit more into this. This is where we have not only a defiance by the executive of a court order, district court order, by them saying, oops, it's, oopsie, it's done again. That was specific to the Venezuelans, but the same can be said. And the continuing comments by the press secretary, by the border czar, if we're going to continue to do this, judge's orders or not, this is what we feel we should do. So we now have a call to, stemming from the president and trickling down, to impeach this particular judge, Judge Sorokin, because of his order and his disagreement with the executive.
Right. And he hasn't he may or may not have made the right decision. I don't know
Right.
enough about immigration law to know.
But it wasn't even
But-
a final decision.
No,
and that's
no,
what's
it-
killing me here.
It's not only not his final decision, but even if it had been his, that would not be final.
Right.
It could still
It's an
be
appeal.
appealed.
You
And,
have a process.
Judges actually have a fairly fair number, given that they serve basically for life terms, they still have a large number of restraints, particularly because we do have a tiered
Absolutely.
legal system here. So,
It's
let's tie this so
Yeah.
if we can, because I think the more well, I don't know if it's more interesting. The one you're dealing with is more obvious defiance of a court
right.
order.
It feels
But
like it's
the other
completely
case
obvious.
where now I don't know if they've defied a court order by taking someone from New York and putting them in Louisiana or not. I just don't know on that.
Right.
But they have taken a graduate student, a former graduate
Columbia.
student, graduated from Columbia, and said, "You led demonstrations on behalf of
Pro-Palestinian.
Palestine, and we know that Hamas also favors Palestine, or say they do,
Right.
and because of your connection with Hamas, we're going to send you back." And this is
we
the
believe
classic.
he's still detained here and not
Yeah.
he's the one that has not been deported, but he's detained and he's legally here.
Right. He has I don't think it may be a green. I don't know if it's a green
I don't know if
card
it
or
was
a
an
student.
H-1 visa.
He's
I
actually
can't
married, by
remember.
the way, to an
US
American
citizen.
who's about to give birth.
Yeah. They haven't deported
This
him,
is
but at
classic.
this point, why would they wait?
Right.
They've deported everyone else.
Yeah, this is classic guilt by association. And again, I mean, we do know he was a leader in some of the demonstrations on the Columbia campus,
Sure.
supporting Palestine against Israel. And that's not the position the president has taken. It's not necessarily the position that I would take. But unless this person actually intentionally fomented violence or actually disobeyed his own court order or whatever,
Acted illegally.
he has the same rights as a resident American
Yes.
as a U.S. citizen does. And there are several cases which have established, as long as you're a legal resident within the United States, you get to exercise First Amendment freedom.
Right. The United States has jurisdiction over you, and you get the same rights within that jurisdiction.
That's right.
And in his case, with regard, we get into a whole bunch of different constitutional issues with regard to free speech, with regard to the gathering, right?
Freedom of association.
Freedom of association is, as I understand it, and again, we have a little bit of facts and maybe enough to be dangerous, maybe not enough, but what was he actually calling for? And just because someone is pro-Palestinian, does that mean that they're pro-Hamas? I don't believe that could be
I don't actually think Hamas is pro-Palestinian.
Right. So the question becomes, is it just because someone's supporting Palestinians, or is it because they're supporting Hamas?
Okay.
And in this particular case, I think that there's, the due process must be had, at least formal immigration hearings and rights and rules that need to be followed. And the same with this appeal for the University of Brown professor is, there's a court order to stay. Just pause a little bit. And those orders are just as valid in my legal world, as well as all the attorneys who work in America. It's the same thing. If the court issues an order, you have to wait. You have to follow that order unless and until there's a different order, either by the same judge or by an appellate judge. But we have a legal system that must be followed. And the question in my mind is, is it true that the president can just not follow any legal course? Does he not even need to will he decide, I don't even need to follow the appellate procedure, which is essentially what he's saying in this case. And in the others is, I'm going to deport them because I want to, forget these court orders. And now what can you do about it? Nothing. And then that will lead to continuous.
The king is above the law. We don't have a king.
Right.
We have a president. And there is, to go back to Trump versus U.S.,
yes,
there is a political mechanism, I mean, one is, of course, election.
Right.
The president has a 4-year term, so we can't do a lot there. But there is a possible impeachment and conviction and removal, not likely to succeed given the current partisan outcome.
But there is
But
an
again,
option.
if we go back to Nixon,
Yes.
there was a time in history where there was a bipartisan consensus.
Yes.
That someone had so crossed the line in terms of, and again, a lot of this was similar, right?
Yeah.
We're gathering, you had the FBI and the CIA gathering personal information about so-called enemies of the president.
Right.
You had the president. Now, this never got to a vote, or I don't think it became one of them, but there were allegations that the president was secretly bombing Cambodia when he didn't have authorization to do so. These were, legal issues.
Yeah. So we've got those, and now with the impeachment, we've even got articles of impeachment drawn up by some Republicans in the House, I believe, for Judge Sorokin.
And this is really poor. I mean, this is politically bad, because these are the Republicans who have vehemently argued that the impeachments against Donald Trump were without foundation.
And were politically motivated.
Okay, so has this judge, now, again, the president has said he's a crooked judge.
Right.
No evidence of bribery, no evidence of treason, no evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Right. Instead, he's a fanatical leftist, lunatic.
And think, did the person at Brown University, who stirred up more violence against the United States? Was it this person protesting at Columbia University, or was it the president of the United States telling a crowd, you've been cheated, go to the Capitol and do something about it?
Right. Right.
We got to talk about something more fun. I want to talk about the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, we have to end with that. Yes.
Okay, so Statue of Liberty was given, and this relates actually to what we said earlier about the semi-quincentennial.
Yes.
It was given, 1876 or was it 1887? 1886, somewhere along in there.
I can't recall.
It was given to commemorate, actually, emancipation of the slaves, and it was given by
France.
Well, they say French government. It had as much to do with the Bartelli, I believe it was. Was it Bartelli or Eiffel?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I know
Whoever
Eiffel made
the person
the Eiffel,
was who did it.
Yeah,
It was sort of his idea, but there's now a legislator in France who's demanding that we return it because we seem to be.
I'm sorry, I'm taking a sip of
instead
a
of
drink.
celebrating liberty in the world, we seem to be siding with dictators. And it's such a good idea. I wish I had come up with it earlier.
Right, I know. I had to. I mean, it's not funny, but I did laugh when I heard it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's hilarious!"
Well, and
but
again,
it's serious in its implications.
If you think particularly about the Statue of Liberty, it's not just now. This is actually a later meaning. The initial meaning was liberation for the slaves,
right?
But because of where it was.
It's become
and because
immigrants.
of the poem that was later written by Emma Lazarus, it later came to symbolize America's willingness to take what others regarded as their wretched refuse of the world and make citizens of them.
It's been sitting in New York, and with immigrant ships coming in, going through Ellis Island for... actual processing, it's become, like you're saying, a symbol of hope and American freedom, where immigrants
and openness to people from all over the world.
That we're a melting pot.
We're going to get a criticism. Is it in New York or is it in New Jersey? It seems to me that there is a determination that the island that it was on is actually New Jersey.
Oh my heavens. Okay, well, we do have
it's
to
in
get
New
that
York
right.
Harbor, so
I'm going to Google it.
Enough. But I believe there is some dispute as to whether the island where the Statue of Liberty is actually New Jersey or New York. But
okay, let's
put in a good word for both states.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, you want to
I
do?
don't know. Yeah.
Gonna Google where is the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And of course I'm getting, when I'm looking it up, it's in conjunction with Ellis Island. Let's see.
Seems to me there was actually, I want to say there's Liberty Island in New York Harbor, which is considered a part of the state of New York.
Correct. It stops at Liberty
even though
Island.
it is surrounded by New Jersey's territorial waters. Now that's AI. Overview, which may or may not be correct. The Wikipedia Statue of Liberty National Monument is located in Hudson County, New Jersey.
Oh, fascinating. So, okay. Ellis Island, I think, is actually New York.
Yeah, I believe so. But anyway.
All right.
Just putting that out there so we don't get sued.
You can see it from both states.
So I've got to tell you about my visit to Berkeley Plantation.
Okay.
Which is a plantation about 30 miles between Williamsburg, Virginia, and Richmond, Virginia. And it was owned by the Harrison family. William Henry Harrison, the first, I think it was the signer of the Declaration of Independence. His grandson was maybe president. Let's see, William Henry Harrison and then Benjamin Harrison. They were all related. They all grew up on, or last one didn't grow up on the plantation, but it was first like 7 or 8 presidents all visited at one time or another this Berkeley Plantation. And you go there, and we're going back now to discuss New York and New Jersey and who gets to claim the Statue of Liberty. So you go there, and they have this thing that says that this is where the first Thanksgiving was held. Oh. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And they have a letter from John F. Kennedy in the House that says, I acknowledge, basically, even though I'm a resident of Massachusetts, that I misspoke, and that Virginia was actually the first Thanksgiving. And so I asked a few questions. And I said, so did they have turkey there? I said, no turkey. Did they have pumpkin pie? No pumpkin pie. What happened is when the English explorers came in, as ordered by the king, they got off their boat, bowed down, and lifted a prayer of thanksgiving.
Oh, interesting.
And I said, okay, you can call that Thanksgiving, but as far as I'm concerned, if they don't have pumpkin pie and turkey, it's not Thanksgiving.
We need the table with the Native Americans. Yeah.
Yes.
Some corn in there. Yeah.
So it's sort of the same as, does it really matter if the Statue of Liberty is in New Jersey or New York? Probably not. What it means is the symbol is important.
Yes.
And sometimes symbols, nonverbal symbols, can tell us as much about a culture as written symbols can, or spoken words.
Absolutely.
And I think the Statue of Liberty has become one of those symbols. And when foreign governments begin to ask whether we are living up to our symbols, we need to take it seriously.
Agreed. And we have to get in the response before we end. So with the call, there was a press conference with the press secretary of the White House, where she was told by one of the reporters of, we've understood that France has issued a request for the Statue of Liberty back. What's your response? Yeah. And I totally agree with her first response, which is it's not going to happen, or something to that effect, if we're not going to give it back. But then I will say, personally, and this is my own personal opinion, her response was quite shocking and inappropriate, where her response was that France, quote, should be grateful to the U.S. that they don't speak German.
Well, and actually, there's a way in which that's true. In other words, that sort of actually accentuates the point.
Right.
When we fought against Germany in World War II, we were not taking the side of dictators. We were taking the side of free governments against dictators.
Right, including France and England and Poland.
What this person, I think in a fairly humorous way, is trying to say from France is, we've known you for standing up for free peoples.
Absolutely.
Now you seem to be on the other side. And you see this, who knows where the situation with with Ukraine and Russia is.
Right.
But when you have a president who refuses even publicly to acknowledge that Russia is the aggressor, it just seems topsy-turvy with the values that we did support in World War I and World War II, and even in Korea and Vietnam, where maybe the outcomes were not quite what we hoped for, and was a lot messier, but at least in theory, we were on the side of what we perceived to be free governments, as opposed to dictatorial governments.
And even with the Iraq War, right?
Yeah,
and even with the most recent, with the 9/11 and the war on terrorism, against democracy, against what we stand for, and it does seem that. It seems like we're on a little slippery slope, and I hope that that's not so, and I hope that it goes in the opposite direction of what a lot of Republicans, a lot of Trump supporters, and Trump himself seems to be saying is, yeah, we are democracy, we are supporting free speech, we are supporting capitalism and a good economy. So, I will choose to hope. I am not hopeful, but I will try to choose to hope. And what I'd love to do is for everyone to stay tuned. Stay tuned to our channel to catch the legal issues of what's happening. And honestly, we were told a couple of times that we're a political program, which in a way we are, but the underlying that we're trying to get to is the specific legal piece. And right now, they're not too far separate of legalities, legal issues, procedural issues within the law, and what's happening in political parties and with politics. So stay tuned. Let's see what happens with each of these three issues. Trump's defiance of the order to pay back $2 billion or pay $2 billion to USAID, as was put in Congress's order of their distribution, of the deportation of Venezuelans who are potentially gang members. Probably most of them are a specific gang member. So the defiance of those orders to leave them in the United States, at least for a time being. Again, we're going back to, not now. And then this final one where a Brown University professor was deported despite a judge's order to the executive saying, not now, at least the 48 hours notice. So we're going to stay tuned and keep our eyes out as to what happens with those, including on appeals. This is a very interesting and material issue that will be deciding ultimately what the powers are between the executive and the judiciary. And that's exactly where we are and what we're looking at. So join us next time on the Legal Weekly Wine.